my name is Barbara Allan. I am author of the book Conquering Arthritis, What Doctors Don't Tell You Because They Don't Know. It's been the #1 best-selling arthritis book on Amazon.com for 9 years now. I work with many clients one-on-one and to get well, and one of the keys is identifying what food sensitivities you have and then avoiding those foods for somewhere between 6 months and 2 years, depending on the food. And usually you'll be able to eat it again. Many of the people I work with are gluten sensitive, not all of them, so it's not necessary for some people with arthritis to avoid gluten to heal, but it is for many. If you want to be individually tested, there's information about how to do that underneath this video if you click the Show More button. But right now what I'm interested in doing is one of my clients begged me to find a gluten-free crepe recipe. He couldn't have gluten. So this is what I've come up with. If you have a problem with eggs, this isn't going to work for you, but probably you can make substitutions for just about anything else and have this gluten-free crepe recipe work. So now time to make some gluten-free crepes. We start with 2 eggs, 1 tablespoon of oil. I made this recipe once without any oil in here. I just used the oil in the pan and that worked fine too. So if you're trying to cut down on oil, you can skip the oil that goes in. If you're trying to make sure you get as many calories as possible because you're thin, go ahead and use the oil. Not that I need to be using it right now. I don't have any coconut oil with me, but since we're using coconut flour in this recipe, if coconut agrees with you and it's not one of your trigger foods, it's probably best just to stay within that genre of foods and don't add any extra different foods so to make your rotation easier. I'm also using cow's milk, but you could use coconut milk as well for this recipe. Then a little bit of sweetener is what this recipe calls for, just 1 teaspoon. The recipe I'm working from actually calls for using sugar, but many people have a reaction against cane sugar. So if you do, use another sweetener. Today I'm going to use a little bit of maple syrup, and I'm just going to use 1 teaspoon. If for some reason you've got a problem with yeast, like candida, just skip the sweetener. The recipe will still be very good without it. So that was totally optional. This was totally optional. I'm going to add just a little bit of salt to taste. The recipe calls for 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Since I'm using sea salt and it's undiluted, the recipe, if I was following the recipe, I'd only want 1/8 of a teaspoon because regular table salt is half dextrose, which is a corn product. So to avoid getting that corn exposure, you only need half as much sea salt as regular salt. Just to beat the eggs in the oil, in the sweetener and the salt. Then I've got coconut flour here, 2 tablespoons. And then add the flour. And right now, to me, this smells like Easter because I associate Easter with coconut confections. So the coconut flour just smells wonderful to me. It seems like a holiday, and even though it's October right now while I'm filming this, kind of makes it feel like early spring or mid-spring because of that Easter connection. I'm going to add the milk. going for is a thin batter here. So whatever oil you're using, you'll add a little bit of that to the pan. It's actually time to make the crepes now. I'm going to move over to my frying pan. So here we are at the frying pan. Use whatever oil you're using, add a little bit to the pan. To get the lumps out of the batter, I went ahead and used a whisk, and that worked just fine. I've maybe overheated my pan slightly, but I bet we'll still get a very nice crepe here. Back the heat off. I love these crepes. They're really soft and fluffy. And like one of the other crepes I did with chickpea flour, this has a very subtle taste instead of a strong taste, which is nice, but this is really much more like a traditional crepe. See if I can flip this one or not. Haha, sort of. If anybody would like to do a response video with a better flip, I would love to see it. Maybe I'll learn something from you.